and welcome to another episode of the English Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and today we're going to dive into something that many of us struggle with when learning English talking without overthinking. If you've ever found yourself hesitating, pausing, or constantly second-guessing yourself when speaking, you're not alone. Overthinking can be one of the biggest obstacles to speaking English fluently. But don't worry. We're here to help you break free from that habit and start speaking more naturally and confidently.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia, and I'm so excited to be here with Jason today to talk about how to overcome that mental barrier that stops many learners from speaking freely in English. We've all been there, feeling like we need to get it right or say it perfectly. But the truth is, the more we try to control every word, the harder it becomes to speak naturally. So in today's episode, we'll be sharing some useful tips and tricks to help you stop thinking too much and start talking like a pro.
Exactly. Today, we'll talk about why overthinking happens, how it affects our fluency, and most importantly, what we can do to start speaking English naturally without the constant mental editing. Whether you're a beginner or an intermediate learner, these strategies will help you get one step closer to thinking in English and speaking with confidence.
And we'll also share some simple, everyday activities that you can do to help train your brain to speak without hesitation. So stay with us until the end because you won't want to miss these tips. Let's jump right in.
All right, let's kick things off by talking about overthinking. So, what does it actually mean to overthink when speaking English? For many learners, it's that moment when you're about to say something and your mind starts racing. You wonder if your grammar is correct, if the pronunciation is right, or if you're using the correct word. Suddenly, what should be a simple conversation turns into a mental battle. Sound familiar?
Absolutely, Jason. I think a lot of learners experience this. They're so focused on getting everything perfect that they end up frozen, not knowing what to say or even how to say it. It's like the mind is filled with too many thoughts, and instead of speaking freely, you end up second-guessing every word before you say it.
Exactly. And this overthinking actually makes it harder to speak fluently. It leads to hesitation and can make conversations feel awkward. The goal is to speak more naturally, but overthinking holds us back from that flow. So, why does this happen in the first place?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. First, many learners are afraid of making mistakes. They worry about being judged, so they focus too much on speaking perfectly. Another reason is the fear of not being understood, so they'll spend extra time choosing the right words or thinking about how to pronounce them. It's completely normal, but it's also one of the biggest barriers to speaking without hesitation.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's that fear of judgment and perfectionism that often causes people to overthink. But the problem is, the more we try to avoid mistakes, the more we delay speaking, which ends up making us less fluent. It's like a cycle. The more we think about it, the more we struggle.
Right. And it's important to remember that everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. The key is not to focus on being perfect, but rather on communicating your ideas clearly and confidently. After all, English is a tool for communication, not a test of your knowledge of every rule.
Exactly, Julia. And I think this is a big mindset shift that learners need to make. Instead of aiming for perfection, we should aim to be clear and natural in our conversations. This brings us to the next point. How can we stop overthinking and start speaking more freely?
Well, we're going to dive into that soon, but before we do, let's do a quick role play. I'll show you how overthinking can affect fluency. Watch how I freeze when I try to speak too carefully. Role play begins. Julia, overthinking. I want to say that, I think the weather is, very nice today, right? And role play.
See? She's trying so hard to get everything right that the sentence becomes clunky and unnatural. But when you let go of the overthinking, it sounds much better.
Exactly. Now let me show you how a natural conversation would go without overthinking. Role play begins again. Julia, natural. The weather's really nice today. End role play.
Much smoother, right? That's what we're aiming for. The key is to not overthink every little detail and just focus on getting your message across. We'll explore how to do that in the next segments. But first, let's talk about why it's so important to speak without overthinking. Now that we understand why overthinking is such a problem, let's dive into why it's so important to speak English naturally, without hesitation. For many learners, speaking freely might feel like a huge challenge, but when you let go of overthinking, you'll see huge improvements in both fluency and confidence. Julia, why do you think speaking naturally is so important for learners?
Great question, Jason. I think the most obvious reason is that it allows you to communicate more effectively. When you're constantly pausing to think about the next word or how to say something, it breaks the flow of the conversation. But when you speak naturally, the conversation feels more fluid and enjoyable for both you and the person you're speaking with. It's like you're not just trying to speak English, you're engaging in a real conversation.
Exactly. And the more you engage in these natural conversations, the more confident you'll become. For example, when you stop overthinking, you're able to listen better, which makes it easier to respond in the moment. When you're stuck in your head, it's hard to follow along with the conversation.
That's right. And I also think that speaking naturally helps you avoid the common trap of translating from your native language. This is something many learners struggle with. They're thinking in their first language and then translating each word into English. But that takes time and can make you sound less fluent. The goal is to start thinking directly in English, and speaking naturally helps with that.
You've hit the nail on the head, Julia. Translation slows everything down and makes you sound less confident. But when you speak naturally, you're less focused on the mechanics of the language and more focused on the message itself. You stop worrying about grammar rules and just focus on communicating clearly and effectively.
Exactly. And when you're more relaxed in a conversation, it's easier for the other person to understand you, too. Have you ever had a conversation where you could tell the other person was really focused on getting their English perfect? It often makes things a bit awkward, right?
Yes. When both people are trying to be perfect, it creates tension. But when you speak naturally, you create an environment where the conversation flows easily. You also build rapport with the person you're speaking to, which makes it much more enjoyable and less stressful.
And that's what we want, right? We want English to feel like a tool for communication, not a test of how well we know the rules. At the end of the day, people just want to understand what you're saying. The more you speak naturally, the more you'll feel like you belong in English-speaking environments.
I couldn't agree more. And on top of that, when you speak naturally, you also start to sound more like a native speaker. Native speakers don't pause to think about every word they just talk. By practicing speaking naturally, you can get closer to that level of fluency.
Exactly. It's not about being perfect. It's about being able to express yourself in a way that feels authentic, and the more you practice, the more natural it will feel. Speaking naturally also helps you stay engaged and connected in conversations, which is what we all want.
Absolutely, Julia. So, now that we know why it's so important to speak naturally, let's move on and talk about the mental blockages that often stop learners from speaking freely. Because understanding those barriers is the first step in overcoming them. Now that we understand why speaking naturally is so important, let's explore the mental blockages that can stop us from speaking freely. We've all experienced those moments when we want to speak, but something inside holds us back. Julia, what do you think are the most common mental blockages that prevent learners from speaking confidently?
I think one of the biggest blockages is the fear of making mistakes. A lot of learners are so worried about speaking incorrectly that they freeze up when it's their turn to talk. They think, what if I say something wrong? Or what if I get laughed at? This fear can be paralyzing, and it's a huge barrier to fluency.
I agree with you, Julia. It's a major issue. Learners often get so caught up in being perfect that they forget that mistakes are part of the learning process. Even native speakers make mistakes. But when we let that fear control us, it stops us from practicing, and that's how we lose opportunities to improve.
Right. And another mental barrier that can prevent us from speaking freely is the fear of judgment. Many learners worry about how others will perceive them, whether it's their accent, their grammar, or their vocabulary. They're so focused on how they look to others that they forget to just focus on the conversation itself.
That's another great point. The fear of judgment makes us self-conscious, and that makes us hesitate. But in reality, most people are understanding and patient. They're not focused on your mistakes. They're focused on your message. And even if someone corrects you, it's a learning opportunity, not something to be afraid of.
Exactly. Another mental barrier I often see is perfectionism. Learners want to speak with perfect grammar, perfect pronunciation, and perfect vocabulary. While it's great to aim for improvement, trying to be perfect all the time actually holds us back. Language learning is about progress, not perfection.
That's so true. Perfectionism can lead to frustration because you'll always find something to improve. But if you let go of that need for perfection, you'll find yourself speaking more freely and making progress at a much faster rate.
And then there's the pressure of wanting to sound native. Many learners try so hard to sound like a native speaker that they ignore their own unique style of speaking. But the truth is, you don't need to sound like a native speaker to be effective in English. What's important is that you can express yourself clearly and confidently.
Absolutely. It's important to embrace your own voice. Native speakers don't expect you to speak exactly like them, they just want to understand you and engage in a meaningful conversation. So, these mental blockages, fear of mistakes, fear of judgment, perfectionism, and the pressure to sound native are things we need to let go of if we want to speak more naturally.
Right. And once we start recognizing these mental barriers, we can begin to challenge them. The key is to shift our mindset and focus on progress, not perfection. It's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to have an accent, and it's okay to not sound like a native speaker. What matters is that you're speaking and improving.
Exactly. And when we let go of these blockages, it becomes easier to speak freely and confidently. The next step is to develop strategies to overcome these mental barriers and speak more naturally. But before we get to that, let's take a quick moment to reflect on these blockages. Are any of these familiar to you? All right, now that we've understood the mental blockages that stop us from speaking freely, it's time to talk about how we can train our brains to speak more spontaneously and naturally. Julia, what's the first step in making this shift?
The first step is to stop overthinking every word. The more we focus on thinking before speaking, the harder it becomes to speak spontaneously. One way to start training your brain is by practicing speaking without any pressure to be perfect. Just get your thoughts out in English, even if they aren't perfectly structured.
That's so true. One great way to do this is through free talking exercises. For example, set a timer for 2 minutes and just talk about anything in English. Don't worry about making mistakes, Don't pause to think about grammar, just talk. The goal is to build the habit of speaking without overthinking.
Exactly. And another powerful technique is shadowing. Shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker, whether it's a podcast, an interview, or a conversation, and then repeat what they say immediately after. The key here is to match their tone, speed, and rhythm. This exercise trains your brain to react quickly in English, helping you speak more spontaneously.
I love shadowing. It really helps with fluency. The key is to keep practicing and not worry about being perfect. The more you do it, the more your brain will get used to thinking and speaking in English at a natural pace.
Another technique to train your brain is chunking. This means grouping words together in natural phrases instead of trying to translate word by word. For example, instead of thinking, "I want to go to the store now," think of it as one chunk. "I want to go to the store now." This helps your brain process language faster and helps you sound more natural.
Great point, Julia. Chunking is a game changer. It reduces the time your brain spends thinking about individual words, which lets you speak more fluidly. A good practice for chunking is to listen to short clips of conversations, then try to repeat them in the same way, paying attention to how the words flow together.
And let's not forget about mental rehearsal. This is when you mentally practice conversations in your head before having them. For example, if you know you're going to meet someone and have a conversation in English, you can mentally run through the key phrases or topics you might talk about. This helps you feel more prepared and confident when the actual conversation happens.
Mental rehearsal is super useful, especially when you know you'll have to speak in a particular situation, like at work or while traveling. By visualizing the conversation beforehand, you can reduce anxiety and be more comfortable speaking spontaneously.
Right. And lastly, real-time conversations are essential for training your brain to speak spontaneously. This means actively participating in conversations with others, even if it's just small talk. It doesn't matter if you're speaking with a language partner or a friend. The more you practice in real-life situations, the easier it becomes to think and speak in English without pausing to think.
Exactly. And remember, it's all about consistency. You don't need to speak perfectly every time, but the more you practice these techniques, the quicker your brain will adjust to thinking in English and speaking spontaneously.
That's right. So, to sum up, training your brain for spontaneous speaking involves letting go of the need for perfection, practicing free talking, shadowing native speakers, using chunking, mentally rehearsing conversations, and engaging in real-time conversations. All of these techniques help your brain process and respond quickly in English.
And the best part is, the more you practice, the more natural and confident you'll feel. It's a process, but with consistent effort, speaking spontaneously becomes second nature. So, don't be afraid to make mistakes, just keep speaking. So far, we've covered how to train your brain for spontaneous speaking, but let's take it one step further. Julia, what are some everyday activities that can actually help improve our natural speaking skills?
I love this question, Jason. The truth is, we don't always need formal lessons to improve our speaking. Everyday activities are great opportunities to practice English naturally. One simple way is to narrate your action in English as you go about your day. For example, if you're making breakfast, you can say to yourself, "I'm cracking the eggs. Now I'm heating the pan. I need to add some salt." It's like having a personal commentary while doing things.
That's a great way to practice. And it's so natural. You don't have to sit down and study. Just talk about what you're doing in English as you do it. Another activity I recommend is describing what you see around you. For example, if you're walking in a park or on a bus, look around and describe the things you see in English. You can say, "The trees are green, the sky is cloudy, there's a man reading a newspaper." This helps you improve your vocabulary and build your confidence when describing things.
Exactly. And there's another great activity that many learners overlook: listening and repeating while doing household chores. You can listen to podcasts or YouTube videos in English while washing dishes, folding laundry, or even cleaning. Try to repeat what the speakers say after hearing them. This way you're practicing listening and speaking at the same time, and it's effortless because you're already doing something else.
I love multitasking in this way. It makes learning feel less like a chore and more like part of your routine. Another everyday activity that's perfect for improving speaking is engaging in small talk with people around you. Whether it's with a friend, a colleague, or even someone at the grocery store, make an effort to start simple conversations in English. Even if it's just saying, "Hi, how are you?" or "The weather is nice today." These little exchanges help you become more comfortable with real-world conversations.
Absolutely. And don't forget about thinking in English. Whenever you're alone, try to think through your day or your plans in English. For example, when you're deciding what to have for lunch, think about it in English. What should I eat? Maybe I'll have a sandwich. I'll go to the kitchen and grab some bread. This helps you break the habit of translating from your native language and encourages thinking directly in English.
Great point, Julia. Thinking in English is a game changer when it comes to fluency. One last activity I want to mention is watching movies or TV shows in English, but with a twist: pause the movie and try to repeat the dialogue. It's a fun way to practice natural expressions, slang, and the rhythm of speech. You can even mimic the actor's body language and tone to make your speaking more lively and expressive.
Yes, that's such a fun way to learn. Watching TV shows or movies lets you hear how native speakers really talk with all the informal language, contractions, and humor. It's a great way to build your understanding of natural, everyday speech.
So, there you have it, some simple, everyday activities you can incorporate into your routine to improve your English speaking naturally. By narrating your actions, describing what you see, listening and repeating, engaging in small talk, thinking in English, and even watching TV shows, you're constantly practicing and building your fluency without even realizing it.
Exactly. The key is to find ways to speak English every day, even in small moments. The more you practice in real-life situations, the more natural and confident you'll become.
So, don't worry about finding extra time for speaking practice. Just use the moments you already have. And remember, the more you do it, the easier it gets. Now that we've talked about how to train your brain for spontaneous speaking and how to use everyday activities to practice, let's dive into the big question. Why is speaking English without thinking so important? Julia, what are the benefits of speaking English naturally and without overthinking?
Great question, Jason. One of the biggest benefits of speaking without thinking is that it increases your fluency. When you're not constantly pausing to find the right word or structure a sentence, you can speak more smoothly and naturally. This leads to quicker conversations and less hesitation, which is essential for building fluency.
That's true. And along with fluency, confidence plays a huge role. When you speak naturally, without worrying about making mistakes or getting everything perfect, you start to feel more confident in your abilities. Confidence is key when it comes to speaking a new language, and it really boosts your motivation to keep practicing.
Exactly, Jason. And another major benefit is that speaking without thinking helps you react and respond quickly in conversations. This is especially important in real-life situations, like job interviews or when you're traveling. The more you practice thinking and speaking quickly in English, the easier it will be to respond without hesitation in a conversation.
Right. And don't forget that by speaking naturally, you also improve your listening skills. When you stop overthinking, you become more focused on the flow of the conversation. You listen better and can pick up on the little details that native speakers often use, such as slang, idiomatic expressions, or tone changes. This, in turn, makes you a better communicator overall.
Yes, and there's something really special about connecting with others when you speak naturally. When you stop overthinking every word, you start sounding more like a native speaker, which helps you connect on a deeper level with people. You can be more expressive, use more natural body language, and the person you're talking to will respond positively to that.
Definitely. And that leads to the final benefit I want to mention: enjoying conversations. When you're not constantly worried about grammar, vocabulary, or perfect pronunciation, you can actually enjoy the conversation more. It becomes less about what you're saying and more about the connection with the person you're talking to.
That's right. You'll find yourself enjoying your conversations and learning without stress. And ultimately, the more you speak without thinking, the better you'll get at understanding and using English in your daily life.
So, to sum it up, the benefits of speaking English without thinking are huge. You'll become more fluent, confident, quick in conversation, and more connected with others. Plus, you'll enjoy the process of learning much more.
Absolutely. And the more you practice speaking without overthinking, the more natural it becomes. So, don't be afraid to speak freely and make mistakes. That's part of the journey to fluency.
Well, that wraps up today's episode on how to speak English without thinking. We've covered everything from training your brain for spontaneous speaking, to using everyday activities for practice, to the many benefits of speaking naturally. Julia, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think the most important thing to remember is that speaking English naturally takes time and practice. Don't be hard on yourself if you make mistakes. The goal is to keep speaking and learning, and over time you'll become more confident and fluent. The more you practice speaking without overthinking, the more natural it will feel.
Exactly. And remember, practice is key. Start incorporating small speaking activities into your daily routine, whether that's talking to yourself, describing things around you, or having short conversations in English. The more you speak, the easier it will get.
Absolutely. And don't forget to listen to native speakers' podcasts, movies, and conversations are all great ways to absorb the natural rhythm and flow of English. You'll be surprised how much your speaking improves when you just let go and talk.
Before we finish, if you've enjoyed today's episode and found these tips helpful, we'd love for you to leave a comment below or give us a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode of the English Learning Podcast.
And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you and help you with your English learning journey.
Thanks so much for listening today. Keep practicing, stay confident, and remember, the more you speak without thinking, the more natural and fluent you'll become. We'll see you in the next episode.